must have been something in the water in Japan in 1987, because, once again, this is a game based on a European computer game that completely throws out the European computer game and builds something else entirely. At least Monty no Doki Doki Daidassou, or Monty's heart-pounding epic escape, is a halfway decent game. It's got some really serious flaws, only some of which come from the original design, but there are some things to it that work pretty well. The original Monty on the Run was released for Commodore 64, and it was the second game in the Monty Mole series. In this game, Monty's being hunted by the Thatcher government for his part in the miners' strike, and has to escape to Europe. And no, I did not make that up. In the Disk System game, Monty is a human man who's been imprisoned for a murder he did not commit, and he's broken out of prison to find evidence of the real killer. And the way he does this is by traveling to 4 exotic locations and finding 3 pieces of a torn-up photograph of the real killer at each of them. After completing his quest through the 4th location, he returns to court, where if he can correctly reassemble the pieces, then he'll walk away a free man. One danger for him is that there is a fake photograph out there to go with his real one, and if you're not careful, you could mix up the pieces. Before every stage, you get to pick a weapon and a special item for Monty to use. And while I'm going to get into what many of them do, I'm going to spoil things up front here for you. There is only one objectively best choice. Most of the other options are traps that will make things harder for you, if not outright impossible. But there is one weapon that is always better than everything else, and one item that is used extensively on every stage, so you always want to pick those two. I didn't do that while I was playing. I wanted to get as varied footage as possible, and I almost completed level 4, coming just 1 photograph short. So you don't have to play optimally, but if you do, you're going to be a lot happier. Something important to note about all of the weapons is that you can't attack while jumping. A jumps, B attacks, and if you're not standing on solid ground, then it makes the little noise indicating that you've attacked, but nothing happens. That makes attacking enemies way harder than it should be. At least you can duck an attack, and you'll have to hit most creatures that you encounter. For the weapons, the gun is a powerful ranged weapon that comes with no bullets. You have to collect ammunition before you can shoot it. Ammunition is only found on the first stage, and of course, after you complete a stage, your ammunition goes to 0. But don't worry, there's the bow and arrow. It works exactly the same as the gun, right down to requiring ammunition, and its ammunition is only found on stage 2. The sword and mace are effectively identical, melee attacks that do less damage than the ranged weapons. I guess if you really wanted to use one, the mace has longer reach, but don't use one. The bombs travel in an arc and explode, and much of the time they don't do any damage to the enemies they hit. Enemies are just completely unaffected by it. Sometimes I found that if you could get the bomb to hit one of them from above, that it would hurt them then, but it was really inconsistent. At least the bomb was always effective on the boss. I don't know why the boss always got hurt by them, but none of the regular enemies did. Still, it's an option for you. And that leaves the objectively correct answer of the boomerang. It's a ranged weapon with infinite ammo, and it even gets a little bit of height when it comes back so you can hit enemies above you. As for the items available to you, some of them have a use at one specific location in the game. Like the gas mask will protect you from poisonous gas, which exists in one room on level 3. A room that's a dead end with nothing in it except that gas on level 3. I never found a use for the jetpack car or bomb card, and neither did anyone else that I could find. But it's a safe assumption that they're in the same boat, getting used only at very specific points. The armor reduces the amount of damage you take, and that's not bad. On each level you start with 3 hearts, you recover health by collecting red apples, and increase the maximum health by collecting green apples. So you'd think that the armor could help you keep that life bar up a bit. Except, you can take a lot of hits before you lose 1 heart of health. Monty is surprisingly durable on his own. You really don't need that armor. What you'll wind up taking damage from the most on stages is water, because anytime Monty touches that, his health just drains away. And the way that you avoid taking damage from water is by bringing the scuba gear along. Every stage has some lengthy water sections that you have to navigate, and while it's technically possible to just power your way through the water, if you take too much damage or get sent backwards in a stage, you could easily find yourself without enough health to survive those water sections. So always take the scuba gear. There are also a few things that you can collect on the stages themselves. Besides the health items, there's these boots that will let you walk at normal speed through the water. So another thing you'll need to collect. The stages are relatively large and free-roaming. You can easily wander back and forth as you please, assuming you haven't done something that destroyed a one-way path, which is relatively easy to do. Finding the photograph pieces isn't as hard as it could be, but it's also not straightforward. Basically, the pieces of the photo are always hidden inside some block, and the way that you reveal them is by standing in the appropriate spot or attacking that block. And if a block requires that you stand someplace, it could be on top of the block, or it could be half a room away. Basically, you want to keep an eye out for anything that looks suspicious, and then try to fiddle around with it. When I was playing, I'd first attempt a stage on my own, and then I would follow a guide through it. Just another way where I was trying to get some varied footage. Turns out on stage 3, I managed to find all the pieces of the photograph on my own with no guide. So they're hidden, but they're not hidden especially well. Particularly once you understand the stage layout enough to spot the things that look kind of off. There's a boss at the end of every stage, and these bosses just kind of wander back and forth, throwing projectiles in an arc until you defeat them. When they're destroyed, you see which pieces of the photograph you've collected, and any fake portions appear separately. Use the pieces of the photograph as a platform to escape the stage. There's one stage feature you should be aware of, and that's these colored beams of light. They rotate through 3 different colors, and which colors change on every stage. Depending on what color you have, it could let you pass, it could teleport you to a different location, or it could block your path. And the effects of every color change on every stage. So on stage 1, red will let you pass. You'll just have to try things out, or read a guide I guess, to know how to get by them. Monty no Doki Doki Daidassou is not a popular game in Japan, and I would say it's pretty much forgotten. Nobody seems to have nostalgia for this one. My feeling is, it's rough, but it's not that rough. Maybe the biggest challenge here is knowing how many of your options are useless. Once you're over that hump, it's not an outrageous game. It has a lot of nasty death tricks. It's really showing its European computer game roots there. But still, I was having a decent time with it. I wouldn't go so far to call it good. The game's too much of a mess for that. It's just that there's a pretty good variety of things you can do here. And despite hiding everything, it isn't that difficult to figure out what you should be doing. The game might be free-scrolling, but you'll notice that a lot of the obstacles are set up as though they were individual rooms. And from that, you can figure out a lot of what you need to do in the game. Overall, Monty no Doki Doki Daidassou is a weird little mess, but you can have fun with that kind of thing.